Random questions on the beach.
What do you think of Trevor Shard's country music?
As a king of crown.
Give me nothing, man. Give me nothing. Seems as if not everybody appreciates country music like I do, especially furry-ass Sasquatches. Yeah, you heard me. You heard me. Train the muscles, not the joints. So welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and today I'm just walking up the beach here to get a coffee there, but yeah, I figured while I'm walking up here I might as well talk to you a little bit while I get a little bit of a delt workout by holding up my 6-pound camera out to the side at full arm's length for long periods of time. Just assume this entire video is done just all in one cut. That'd be a good thing. Then you'd be like, wow, Jason's so strong. Look at the endurance in his shoulders, it's crazy. What I want to talk to you a little bit about today is foot placement during squats. As a general rule, feet should be about shoulder width or a little bit farther apart. This is very general though, okay? So just bear with me on this, because some of you guys want the general rule, okay? So I'm gonna give you the general rule. The general rule is feet should be about shoulder width apart, and the feet should be maybe pointing straight forward or slightly out. Each one should be pointing slightly out. Depends on how your hips are built and how you're shaped and all that kind of stuff, but that's the general rule, right? So now you have it. Now, a lot of times I find guys try to micromanage things so much that they overdo it. Now, here's the thing. Don't worry about your foot placement as much in squatting, meaning don't worry about micromanaging your foot placement as much as what is the right type of squat for you in order to make sure you're not getting joint pain first and foremost. And second, this is the big thing that is lost on most people, and this is another diamond for you guys. You guys all owe me like at least $20,000 just for this advice here. This next diamond of advice is so valuable, right? Now, most guys, they think about squatting just for the sake of squatting. But if you're squatting to build muscle, especially to build muscle in the legs, ask yourself, are the legs actually hitting failure in the workout, or is it your lower back, your upper back, or is it just your knees are just giving out just because they're just taking such a beating, right? So again, you want to hit the belly of the muscle of that leg. So if you're adjusting your form just to micromanage and hit just the vastus medialis, or you're micromanaging just to hit one small part of the leg, but you're making the movement totally awkward, what will happen is that you're just going to fight the movement the whole time, and then in the end, you're not going to get as much tension on the overall leg, so you're not going to get the same type of leg development. So you have to bear this in mind. Don't be looking to micromanage the movement quite so much. First and foremost, find out how do I have to lift in order to make sure that the legs are hitting failure first before the lower back or before your joints are blowing up, right? Because that's obviously what you don't want. So really my point is, sometimes simplicity is the answer. Simplicity. Right? You don't want to overcomplicate things. You don't want to fight the movement, right? So some guys make the most awkward stuff. Like they turn an exercise into some sort of hideous Frankensteinian type of experience. It's kind of like what you see with some of the CrossFit type stuff. They think that if they are more inventive with a movement and more original, that somehow that makes it better. But a lot of times, if you're going against the natural way that your body moves, it'll actually be something else that you have to overcome, and it will have very little effectiveness in producing more muscle mass or more overall strength without injuring you, right? If I make you do the splits or put your legs behind the head when you're lifting a weight, that doesn't mean the exercise is somehow better just because nobody else can do it. It just means that somehow you're a contortionist and you're actually doing an exercise that will produce a totally different result. So this is what I'm trying to say. With squats or foot placement, you just want to find the placing. Somebody's just really obsessed with me making a video. They just yelled, hey, you're making a video. Well, thank you. That's very observant. People are very observant. I've noticed this in Harrison and Chilliwack. They're very observant. When I'm filming a video, they know and they point it out. And I'm thankful, because otherwise I wouldn't even know that I'm filming a video right now. I wouldn't even have a clue. It's crazy. It's like I'm almost having like an awakening type of experience of all this awareness that I know that a camera is actually in my hand right now. Holy crap. How'd that happen? Let me start over. So basically what I'm saying is, don't fight the movements. Don't make things awkward just for the sake of making them awkward. And sometimes if you try to get too inventive with a movement, like putting your feet in weird positions and stuff just to make sure you accentuate a certain movement, you got to remember in squats, it's not like just moving your feet to a different position is just going to affect what muscles you hit. It's also going to affect how you balance. And this is also where you have a lot more variables to juggle, right? So say you make a movement extremely awkward when you're squatting, just by putting your feet in a different position, well, now you're going to have to overcome a lot more balancing type issues. And sometimes if there's too many of those issues, you're going to risk injury and not get any extra gains whatsoever, because a lot of the weight you're going to be able to lift is going to be significantly lower. You're going to be able to put less tension on the main muscle groups, and it might be counterproductive. So first and foremost, find what's comfortable, find what doesn't injure you, and third, find what is going to keep the tension on the main muscle bellies, right? To hit the most amount of muscles all at once, not just specialize in one muscle or another, like not just train your earlobes or something. Like if you hit the vastus lateralis and the rectus femoris, and you hit the vastus intermedius and the vastus medialis, along with the hamstring, along with the glute, you're obviously getting a lot more overall body stimulus. You want to bring as many muscles into the movement as possible. Not just micromanage and say, okay, I'm just going to hit the vastus medialis, the muscle by the knee and the quad, and then that's it, and just by doing some sort of inventive movement. Now, if you do want to isolate certain muscle groups, you can do that, but I wouldn't recommend doing that in compounds. I wouldn't recommend doing the isolations in compounds as much, especially in compounds where there's a lot of balancing involved. Sometimes using a machine or using an isolation movement itself for that might be more effective or a better strategy. Right? Because if you try to say, I'm going to do my squat workouts and I just want to hit this one part of my quad, or I'm going to do this squat workout just to hit this one part of my hamstring or something, but you're not hitting the overall muscle belly, you might be shortchanging yourself on some gains that you could be getting from that overall compound movement, because the whole goal of the compound is to stimulate as much muscle mass as possible. And as a natural, you really need to do this, because just doing an isolation all the time is just not necessarily going to give you the gains, because you need to get the overall system stimulus in that area in order to encourage growth. If you want to do some sort of specialty type techniques, such as foot placement to hit certain muscle groups and stuff like that, do that as something extra, but not as the main way you perform that lift, if you do insist on still playing around with your compound and doing weird positions.
How'd that feel?
Burns a bit. Yeah, burns.
Burns?
Burns in the general lower body area.
What do you mean?
Yeah, the legs, I think.
What do you mean?
It burns. It hurts.
Which part of your legs?
The quadriceps.
Which ones?
Mostly my vastus lateralis.
Okay.
Vastus intermedius.
Okay.
As well as the rectus femoris a bit. I actually feel a little bit of that.
It's hamstring.
Yeah, the medialis I don't feel too much. A little bit. But I don't go down super low, so that would be another reason why that.
Right, for sure.
But I do feel my hamstring as well.
How are your hip flexors feeling?
They feel fine.
Okay.
But if I go down too low, then yeah, you might pull a hip flexor for sure. Yeah. Some guys, they come down right low, like.
What's your view on keeping your gluteus maximus on the seat?
You have to keep your glute on the seat.
What about those people who go?
People do this. They bring their bum off. You'll herniate a disc in your back.
Okay.
At some point, you'll get away with it for a bit. Not only when you put more stress on your knee, but you'll actually herniate a disc. And I'll give you an example of how I did this in my life and what I found to be true for me. So when I first started lifting weights, I had done martial arts for 10 years. So I was used to doing really low squat type stances, like the Shikodachi stance, or sumo stance you could call it, and Zenkutsu dachi, which is a forward leaning stance. So I spent most of my life in a squat position. Surprising, right? Because a lot of guys would be like, oh, you don't go all the way down, so that means you don't know how to squat. It's like, no, I'm just built this way. My hips and everything are built a certain way, and I've found the efficient way to use my joint integrity and the muscle strength that I have to keep the optimal tension on the muscles, and that's why I squat the way I do. But the bottom line is I spent a lot of time in wide type stances in martial arts. So naturally, when I started squatting, I started with a wide stance because that just felt natural to me. My groove was already established. That's what I was doing. But what I did notice is that I wasn't necessarily getting the thigh development. I wasn't necessarily getting the leg development. I was noticing that a lot of times muscles that were hitting failure weren't necessarily my quadriceps and my hamstrings, but sometimes my glute or my lower back. A lot of times I was bringing a lot of the hips into it, or the lower back really. And so I was lifting some serious weight, but there wasn't really a lot of stimulus going on in the legs. So what I did was I narrowed up my stance and I pointed my toes forward, and that actually seemed to work better for me. Now, of course, I couldn't go as deep when I was doing the squat, but what I noticed was my legs were hitting failure long before my lower back was, and then instantaneously my legs started to grow. So you want to find the efficient way to move, the efficient way to create the stimulus that you want, but also the efficient way that is in resonance with your own body, right? And I'm not saying there can't be more than one variable that you can use. There can be more than one variable in any sort of compound exercise. You can go wider or shorter or narrower, or whatever you want to do, but there is going to be a certain technique that will hit the area you want to hit, and at the same time not put undue stress on the joints and keep that tension on the most amount of muscle all at once.
Little cola and cubes, yeah, that is how we do. 'Cause I'm the king of crown. You feel it up and I'll knock 'em down. I'll drink this town. A red cup rush right into the ground. I got two.
So I hope this helps you out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for the support from the Patreon supporters. And if you need to get home, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com and take care for now. Oh yeah, and share my stuff, eh? You want to share my stuff a little bit? Come on, share it. Help me get my stuff out there. Come on. Be nice, be like a mountain.